welcome back, drowsy traveler. Tonight, we're going somewhere quiet at the very center of the loudest city on earth. We're going to ancient Rome, not to the battlefields or the marble speeches, but to a small round temple where a fire has been burning for longer than anyone can remember, and to the women whose entire lives were given to keeping it alive. Before we drift back, if these slow journeys into the past help you rest, press that subscribe button so you never lose your way back here. And while you settle in, leave a comment with the oldest story your family still tells, a great grandparent's crossing, a name that keeps getting passed down, a rumor no one can prove. If no story comes to mind, simply tell me where in the world you're drifting off tonight. I read them all. Now dim the lights, let your shoulders sink, and let me tell you what life was really like as a Vestal Virgin. You are 6 years old, and you do not yet know that tonight is the last night of your childhood. You are lying on a sleeping couch in your family's house on one of Rome's quieter hills, listening to the sounds every Roman child falls asleep to. A cart creaking somewhere down the street, because heavy wagons are only allowed in the city after dark. A dog answering another dog. Your mother's voice, low in the next room, talking with your father in the tone adults use when they are discussing something important and do not want small ears to hear. Small ears hear anyway. You catch a few words, your own name, the word pontifex, the word Vesta. You know Vesta, of course. Every Roman child knows Vesta. She is the goddess of the hearth, of the fire in the middle of the house, where the food is cooked and the family gathers, and the cold is kept outside where it belongs. She has no statue in your home because she doesn't need one. The fire itself is the goddess. Your mother murmurs to her when she throws a pinch of salted meal into the flames before dinner. Vesta is the warm center of everything. She is the least frightening god you know. So you fall asleep unafraid, which is the last time for a long while that things will be that simple. In the morning, your mother dresses you with unusual care, your best tunic, your hair combed until it shines. She keeps smoothing the fabric on your shoulders even after there is nothing left to smooth, and you notice her hands are trembling slightly, and you file this away the way children file away things they don't understand for later. Here is what you don't yet know, and what she cannot bring herself to explain. Rome keeps 6 priestesses of Vesta, 6 women, and only 6 who tend the sacred fire in the temple at the heart of the forum, the fire that must never ever go out, because as long as it burns, Rome stands. When one of the 6 finishes her service or dies, a replacement must be found, and the replacement is never a grown woman. She is always a girl between 6 and 10 years old, from a good family, with both her mother and her father still living, with no flaw or blemish, with a body whole and a name unstained. A girl, in other words, exactly like you. The man who chooses is the Pontifex Maximus, the chief priest of Rome, one of the most powerful men in the world. In the old days, they say, he would gather 20 suitable girls and draw lots in a public assembly so the gods themselves could steer the choice. In your time, it is often quieter than that. Arrangements, conversations, letters between important men. Some fathers volunteer their daughters, others hide them, because what is about to happen to you is either the greatest honor a Roman girl can receive or the loss of everything a Roman girl is supposed to have, and no one can quite agree on which. Your father holds your hand as you walk down toward the forum, and his grip is too tight, and he does not talk, and your father always talks. The forum swallows you. You have been here before on festival days, riding on shoulders, but you have never been here as the center of attention, and today, impossibly, you are. There are togas everywhere, the heavy white wool of senators, the purple stripes of magistrates. There are faces turning toward you, and at the front of them all stands the Pontifex Maximus himself, waiting beside the small round temple with the smoke rising gently from its center. He does not smile at you the way adults usually smile at children. He looks at you the way a man looks at something he is about to take responsibility for. Then he reaches out, takes your hand, and says the words that Roman law has preserved for centuries, words so old that some of them have gone strange in the mouth. He calls you amata, beloved, the name spoken to every chosen girl, some say after the very first Vestal ever taken. He says that he takes you, as a priestess of Vesta, to perform the sacred rites for the Roman people. I take you. That is the actual legal word, capio. The ceremony itself is called the captio, the taking. And in the space of that one sentence, the law of Rome does something extraordinary to you. Your father's hand, which has held legal power over you since the moment you were born, the famous Roman patria potestas, the father's absolute authority over his children, lets go, not physically, legally. The bond dissolves in an instant, without ceremony of mourning, without the usual rituals. You are no longer under your father's power. You are no longer, in the eyes of the law, entirely his daughter. You belong to Vesta now, which means, in a strange way that will take you years to understand, you belong to Rome itself, all of it. Every citizen in every insula, every farmer in every field, every soldier on every frontier. You are 6 years old, and you have just become part of the machinery that keeps the world's greatest city standing. Your mother is somewhere in the crowd. You look for her face and find it, and she is doing the thing adults do when they are proud and heartbroken at the same time, which is to smile with their mouth while their eyes do something else entirely. You will see your parents again. This is not a dungeon, and Vestals are not prisoners. But you will never again live under their roof. You will never be an ordinary daughter in an ordinary house. Tonight, for the first time in your life, you will sleep somewhere your mother has never been. The priests lead you toward the house of the Vestals, and the crowd watches you go, and somewhere behind you, your father finally exhales. The house of the Vestals, the Atrium Vestae, sits in the Forum itself, right at the foot of the Palatine Hill, pressed up against the small round temple like a mother beside a hearth. It is one of the finest addresses in the world. Emperors live a short walk away. The Senate meets a short walk away. And you, a girl of 6, are about to move in. But first, they take your hair. You are seated, and gentle hands unpin the braids your mother wove this morning, and then, lock by lock, they cut it all away. This is not a punishment. Every new Vestal gives up her hair, the way a bride gives up her old life at the door of her husband's house. The hair itself is not thrown away. Nothing about you is treated carelessly anymore. Tradition says it is hung upon an ancient sacred tree, a lotus older than memory, called the Arbor Capillata, the hair tree, where the hair of little girls, just like you, has been offered for centuries. Your head feels light and cold and strange. Your hair will grow back. When it does, it will be bound in a style you have never worn. The Sani crines, the six braids, the same six braids Roman brides wear on their wedding day. You will wear a bride's hair for the next 30 years. That is the length of your service. 30 years. You cannot yet hold a number that large in your mind, and perhaps that is a mercy. They dress you in white. From now on, white is your color. The plain, radiant white of undyed wool, the color of ritual purity, the color that will make people fall silent and step aside when they see you coming down the street. Around your head goes a band of woolen ribbon called the infula, with soft hanging loops, the mark of a consecrated person. Sacrificial animals wear something similar. So do the holiest of priests. It means this one has been set apart. This one is not to be touched. And then the doors of the atrium Vestae open, and you meet your new family. 5 women in white are waiting for you. The youngest is perhaps 10, still soft-cheeked, and she looks at you with the open relief of a child who is no longer the newest one. The eldest, and you will learn to read the hierarchy soon enough, is the Virgo Vestalis Maxima, the chief Vestal, a woman of perhaps 50 with a face like weathered marble and eyes that miss nothing. She has served Vesta since before your parents were born. She has kept the fire through wars and elections and funerals of emperors. When she looks at you, you feel yourself being measured and then faintly approved. These 5 women and the girls who will come after you are your sisters now, not by blood, by flame. The house they lead you through is unlike any house you have ever seen. It is enormous. In the great days of the empire, it will have some 50 rooms, built around a long open courtyard with pools of still water that catch the sky and hold it, trembling at your feet. There are statues along the courtyard of the chief vestals of the past, white marble women standing in white marble stillness, and you will walk past them every day of your life until their faces are as familiar as your own. There are kitchens, storerooms, a mill for grinding grain. There are servants, yes, servants. The Vestals are not scullery maids, and the Roman state does not skimp on the household of its most important priestesses. There are warm rooms for winter and shaded colonnades for the brutal Roman summer. There is everywhere a kind of hush, not the hush of emptiness, the hush of a place where something important is always being tended. That first night, you lie in a bed that is yours and yours alone, in a room that smells of clean wool and faint wood smoke, and you listen. The forum outside never goes fully quiet. You can hear the night carts again, the same sound as home, and that helps. You can hear a fountain in the courtyard, and underneath it all, if you hold very still, you imagine you can hear the fire itself in the temple next door, the low, patient breathing of the flame that you have been given your whole life to protect. You cry a little because you are 6 and your mother is a mile away, and a mile has never felt so far. One of the older girls hears you. She does not scold. She sits on the edge of your bed in the dark and tells you that she cried too on her first night, and that the fire is warm, and that tomorrow she will show you the donkey that turns the mill, who is gentle and greedy and will eat straight from your hand. You fall asleep to the sound of her voice. Outside, in the round temple, the fire of Vesta burns on, as it burned last night, and the night before, and every night back beyond the founding of the Republic, back into the time of kings, back into legend. Tomorrow, you begin to learn how to keep it that way. To understand your new life, you have to understand what Romans believe about that fire, because it is not decoration, and it is not symbolism, and it is not a metaphor. To the Roman mind, it is load bearing. The fire holds the city up. Every Roman home has a hearth, and every hearth is sacred to Vesta. The family gathers at it, cooks at it, prays at it. The hearth is where a household becomes a household rather than just people under a roof. Now imagine Rome itself as one vast household, 1,000,000 people, one family, one state. That family too must have a hearth, and it does. It is the fire in the round temple, the public hearth of the Roman people. The flame in your keeping is, quite literally, the fireplace of the nation. The Romans believe this fire is old beyond reckoning. Some say it came from Troy itself, carried out of the burning city by the hero Aeneas, ancestor of the Romans, salvaged from one fire to become another. Others say King Numa, Rome's gentle second king, the lawgiver and peacemaker, established the temple and the priestesshood 7 centuries before your time. Either way, the logic is the same. The flame connects Rome to its deepest past. It has been handed down, tended and alive, from hands to hands to hands, for longer than the city's stones have stood. It is the oldest living thing in Rome, and the temple that holds it is strange and beautiful. Nearly every temple in Rome is rectangular, but Vesta's is round, a circle of columns under a cone of a roof, because the oldest Roman houses were round huts, and Vesta's temple remembers the shape of home. At the peak of the roof, there is an opening for the smoke, so that the temple breathes like a hearth breathes. Inside, there is no statue of the goddess. There has never needed to be one. Vesta is not represented by the fire. Vesta, in the oldest and truest understanding, is the fire. Now here is the belief that will govern every day of your next 30 years. If that fire goes out, Rome is in mortal danger. Not people will be upset, not it will be embarrassing. The extinguishing of Vesta's flame is a prodigium, an omen of catastrophe, a sign that the compact between Rome and her gods, the Pax Deorum, has been broken. When the fire dies, Romans do not shrug, they panic. The priests consult the sacred books. The city holds its breath. Because the last times the flame failed or the temple burned, terrible things followed, or so everyone firmly believes. Invasions, civil wars, disasters. Whether the fire predicts the catastrophe or merely accompanies it is a question for philosophers. You are not a philosopher. You are the fire's keeper. Your job is to make sure the question never comes up. 6 women, 1 flame. An empire of 50, 60, 80 million souls stretching from the mists of Britain to the deserts of Syria, and at its exact center, a hearth fire the size of a cooking blaze, watched around the clock by a rotation of priestesses, some of whom are children. When you are old enough to think about it clearly, the arrangement will strike you as either magnificent or mad, depending on the hour of the night. Rome has legions. Rome has fleets. Rome has walls and roads and aqueducts and the largest treasury on earth. And yet Rome, in its bones, believes that all of it rests on whether you and your 5 sisters remember to feed a fire. No pressure, little one. Sleep well. Your watch begins soon. Here is something to make your 6-year-old head spin when the older girls finally tell you the order you have just joined is older than Rome, not older than the empire, not older than the republic, older than the city itself. Every Roman knows the founding story, the way you know your own name. Before Rome, there was Alba Longa, the mother city in the hills, ruled by a line of kings descended from Aeneas of Troy. And in Alba Longa, there were already Vestals, priestesses of the hearth, keeping a sacred fire, bound by the same vow you now carry. One of them was a king's daughter named Rhea Silvia. Her uncle had stolen her father's throne, and to make sure his brother's line would die with her, he did something clever and cruel. He made the girl a Vestal, 30 years of chastity, no husbands, no sons, no heirs. He used the holiest institution in the world as a lock on a dynasty's door. The gods, the story says, picked the lock. Rhea Silvia was found with child by the god Mars himself, she swore, and bore twin boys. The furious king ordered the infants drowned in the Tiber, and the river, having its own opinions, carried them gently to shore instead, where a she-wolf found them and nursed them in the shade of a fig tree. You know their names. Everyone in the world knows their names. Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome. Stop and feel the strangeness of that. The city you serve was born from a Vestal. The order was not created to honor Rome. Rome, in its own telling, exists because a Vestal's story went off script. When Romulus raised his walls, the fire came with him. And when the gentle King Numa, Rome's second king, the great lawgiver, organized the city's religion a generation later, he built the institution you now belong to. The temple in the forum, the house beside it, the college of priestesses, the 30 years, the rules, the honors. 7 centuries before your time, give or take, and the Romans of your day recite it as solid fact. Numa is the figure your teachers speak of the way later ages speak of saints. Where Romulus was war, Numa was peace. A king who reigned 43 years, they say, without a single war, who spent his energy not on conquest, but on calendars, priesthoods, and the careful legal architecture of keeping the gods happy. The Romans, a people who conquered the world, insist with a straight face that their true founder was a man who never fought anyone, and the crown jewel of his peace was your order. The fire was to be Rome's constant, the still point, the thing that did not change when everything changed. He began, the tradition says, with 2 Vestals, then 4, then 6, and 6 it has remained, century upon century, one of the most stable numbers in Roman history. Kings were overthrown, the number held. The Republic rose and tore itself apart. The number held. Emperors arrived, went mad, were murdered, were deified. The number held. Somewhere in the imperial centuries, the college may have grown by 1, the scholars quibble, but for the better part of 1,000 years, the answer to how many Vestals has been the same answer, and you are now 1/6 of it. Lie awake with that arithmetic some night. In a city of 1,000,000 people, in an empire of tens of millions, across 1,000 years of history, the total number of women who have ever done your job is a few hundred. There have been more consuls than Vestals, more triumphing generals than Vestals. You have joined one of the smallest and longest lived institutions humanity has ever maintained. A relay team a millennium long, 6 runners at a time, passing a torch that is never allowed to touch the ground. And the origin story shadows you in one more way, quietly. Rhea Silvia, the first Vestal whose name every Roman knows, is famous for the vows breaking, and from that breaking came Rome. The Romans never quite untangle the knot at the bottom of their own mythology. The city that punishes a fallen Vestal with the evil field owes its existence to one. Your teachers do not dwell on this. The philosophers do at their dinner parties, safely abstract. You are neither. You are the working answer to the whole paradox. As long as the living Vestals keep the vow, Rome may keep the story. So when you sit your first solo night watch, small on the stool before the great hearth, you are not merely guarding a flame. You are holding the oldest thread in the Roman tapestry, older than the forum outside, older than the walls, older than the name of the city, a thread that runs back through Numa's quiet reign, through a wolf-nursed pair of twins on a riverbank, through a king's daughter in Alba Longa, who was given your vows against her will and broke them into history. No other 7-year-old in the world has a bedtime story like yours, and you are in it. There is a part of the temple you will not be shown for years, and which most Romans will never see at all. Behind the flame, screened away from every profane eye, is the Penis Vestae, the innermost storeroom of the temple. In an ordinary Roman house, the penis is simply the pantry, the cupboard where the food is kept, the household's security against hunger. In the temple of Vesta, the penis is the pantry of the Roman state, and what is stored there is not food. No outsider knows exactly what the penis holds. That is the point. Even writers and historians of your own time can only speculate, and they do, endlessly. But the most persistent whisper, the one repeated in respectful lowered voices, is that the penis guards the Palladium, a small ancient image of the goddess Pallas Athena, said to have fallen from heaven itself into the city of Troy. As long as Troy held the Palladium, the story goes, Troy could not fall. The city was only taken after the statue was stolen, and when Aeneas fled the burning ruins, he carried the sacred things of Troy with him to Italy, and so the Palladium came, in the end, to rest in Vesta's keeping. Think about what that means to a Roman. The talisman that once protected the greatest city of the old world now protects Rome, the insurance policy of Troy transferred, and it sits, if the whispers are true, a few steps from where you sweep the floor. There are said to be other objects too, the sacred pledges of empire, the Peniora Imperii, things upon which Rome's destiny is anchored. Nobody outside your sisterhood can list them. Nobody inside your sisterhood ever will. One of the very first lessons the older Vestals teach you is the discipline of the closed mouth. What is in the penis stays in the penis. What is said in the house stays in the house. Rome trusts you with its secrets precisely because you have proven, generation after generation, for centuries, that you do not talk. You will learn just how far that trust extends. When the temple caught fire long before your time, in the year the Romans counted as 513 from the founding during the wars with Carthage, the Pontifex Maximus himself, a man named Caecilius Metellus, ran into the burning building to save the sacred objects, because not even a catastrophe permits an ordinary man to see them. Legend says he was struck blind for laying eyes on what no man should see, and honored forever for saving what no Rome could lose. Both halves of that story are instructions, and you learn to read them. These things matter more than sight, more than safety, more than a man's whole life. And you, a girl who 2 years ago was playing knucklebones in a courtyard, will one day dust the shelf they rest on. At night, in your first years, you sometimes lie awake and think about the little statue in the dark behind the flame, older than Rome, older than the kings, a survivor of the most famous fire in the history of the world, now living beside a fire that is never allowed to die. You start to understand something about your new home. Everything in it is a survivor. The flame survived Troy, or at least the story of it did. The temple survived burnings and rebuildings. The order of the Vestals survived kings, republic, and now emperors. The house does not merely keep old things. The house is an old thing, and it intends to go on surviving, and it has decided that you will help. Your 30 years divide, by ancient custom, into 3 decades, and they have the tidy logic of Roman engineering. For your first 10 years, you learn. For your second 10, you perform the sacred duties. For your final 10, you teach the little girls who arrive as you once arrived, wide-eyed and shorn and trying not to cry. So you begin as a student, and the curriculum is like nothing else in the world. You learn the fire first, because the fire is everything. It sounds simple, keep a flame burning, until you actually try to do it for days on end. A fire is a living thing, and like all living things, it is always trying to die. It gutters in drafts. It drowns in its own ash. It starves quietly when the wood is damp, sinking from flame to ember to a dull red whisper that can fail in the time it takes an exhausted girl to close her eyes. You learn to read a fire the way a physician reads a pulse. You learn which woods burn steady and which burn treacherous. You learn to bank the coals at night so they sleep without dying, to feed the flame without smothering it, to coax heat out of embers that look cold and gone. You keep watch in shifts, day and night, in pairs and alone, as you grow more trusted. There is a particular hour, the deep trough of the night, when even the forum finally goes quiet, when it is just you, a small girl on a stool, and the hearth of the Roman Empire. The flame snaps and murmurs. The smoke rises through the opening in the roof toward the stars. Somewhere out there, legions are camped on frozen rivers, and merchants are crossing dark seas, and the whole colossal machine of Rome is turning, and all of it, every Roman believes, is tethered to the small orange light in front of you. You are 8 years old. You feed the fire another stick. The empire continues. You learn the water next, and the water is stranger than the fire. The temple must be cleaned daily with sacred water, but here is the rule that makes it hard. The water may not come from the city's pipes. Rome has aqueducts that are the wonder of the world, fountains on every corner, and none of it is pure enough for Vesta. The water must be living water, drawn from a sacred spring, the spring of the Camine outside the old walls, the spring where King Numa was said to meet the nymph Egeria, who taught him the laws of religion. So the Vestals walk to fetch water, as women have fetched water since the beginning of the world. And you may not rest the vessel on the ground on the way back, because water for the goddess must not touch the common earth. The jar itself enforces the rule. It is a feudal, a vessel with a rounded, narrow base, cleverly made so that it cannot stand upright. Set it down, and it tips and spills. The only way to carry it is to carry it the whole way, arms aching, pace steady, all the way back to the temple. You will make that walk more times than you could ever count. In summer heat, in winter rain. Your arms will grow strong, and your patience will grow stronger, and you will understand eventually that the jar is a teacher. Some responsibilities cannot be set down, they can only be carried. And you learn the words. Oh, the words. Prayers so old that even your teachers cannot translate every phrase, formulas that must be spoken perfectly, perfectly, because in Roman religion, a misspoken prayer is a broken prayer, and a broken prayer can undo the ritual of an entire day. You memorize invocations, festival liturgies, the calendar of sacred days that structures the whole Roman year. You learn what may be touched and what may not, what may be seen and what may not, which days are lucky and which are black. It is an education as rigorous as any lawyer's, and you receive it entirely from women, which makes the house of the Vestals one of the only places in the Roman world where the teachers, the masters, and the authorities are all female. Slowly, year by year, the little girl who cried on her first night becomes something else. You stop performing the rituals and start inhabiting them. Your hands know the work before your mind does. The older Vestals begin trusting you with longer watches, harder duties, quieter secrets. By the time you are 16, Rome's most sacred fire has spent whole nights with no guardian but you, and both of you are still burning. Let's walk through a single day. Nothing special, no festival, no crisis. A plain Tuesday of the sacred life, somewhere in your middle years, when the work has long since worn itself into the shape of you. You wake before dawn, because Rome wakes before dawn, and the temple wakes before Rome. The house is dim and blue, the courtyard pools like sheets of dark metal. Whoever held the last night watch is coming off it now, hollow-eyed and moving carefully, and you exchange the handful of words that shift workers have exchanged since the invention of night. How the fire behaved, how the wind sat, whether the wood store wants restocking. The flame is handed from keeper to keeper, like a sleeping child. First light finds you at the morning rites. The fire is fed and tended, the prayers of daybreak spoken, the exact syllables, in the exact order, the words your predecessors said on this spot when Hannibal was in Italy. Fresh water must be brought from the sacred spring, and if today the feudal jar is yours, you make the walk while the city is still cool, out through the waking forum, past the shopkeepers unlocking their shutters, past the barbers setting stools on the pavement, to the green hush of the spring, and back, arms burning, posture perfect, the jar that cannot be set down, teaching its daily lesson in commitment. By mid-morning, the forum outside is at full roar, and the house runs like the well-funded establishment it is. The servants are about their work. The accounts want reviewing. You have property, remember, rents and estates and investments, and no husband or guardian to manage them, which means the ledgers come to you. You sit with a secretary and correspondence, a steward's report from a farm you own, a letter from your brother about his son's first legal case, an invitation declined with courtesy from a senator's wife angling for the prestige of a Vestal at her dinner table, A slave you have decided to free stands before you. You speak the words. A person's whole legal existence changes because a woman said a sentence. It is Tuesday. Perhaps there are official visitors. A praetor's clerk depositing a sealed will with the reverence of a man handling live coals. A magistrate consulting the chief vestal on a point of ritual law. A family, scrubbed, awed, hopeful, presenting a small daughter for consideration, the mother's hands smoothing the child's shoulders, exactly the way your mother once smoothed yours, and you keep your face kind and give nothing away. Midday, the meal, and afterward the long Roman afternoon. There is always temple work, the endless cycle of cleaning, the preparation of ritual substances, the maintenance of the storerooms, the instruction of the novices. This afternoon it is the 8-year-old, frowning ferociously over a prayer she keeps stumbling in the same place you used to stumble, and you do not tell her that yet. Some afternoons take you out, a public sacrifice requiring vestal presence, a ceremony across the city, the games, where you settle into the marble seats of honor while 50,000 people check from the corner of their eye that the women in white have arrived, because nothing official truly starts until you have. You are back before evening, because you are always back before evening. The fire does not care how good the games were. Dinner with the sisters, the day's news traded and gently mocked. Then the lamps, the letters, the needlework, the slow putting away of the day, and the night rotation posted, as it is always posted, the little grid of names and hours that has structured this house since before the Republic. If tonight is yours, you dress warm and cross the few steps to the temple as the forum empties. If it isn't, you lie down in the room that has been yours for decades, in the house that breathes around you, the faint crackle next door, a sister's cough down the corridor, the fountain, the watchman's step, and you sleep the specific sleep of people who know exactly what tomorrow holds, because tomorrow holds this again, and so does the day after, 5,000 more times. Is it monotonous? An outsider would say so. The outsider would be wrong in an interesting way, because the repetition is the point. It is the whole engineering of the thing. Rome does not need the Vestals to be brilliant, spontaneous, or new. Rome needs the fire alive at dawn, every dawn, forever. And the only machine ever invented that can guarantee forever is a routine so deep it survives the individual people running it. Your day is not a rut. It is a groove, cut by centuries, polished by repetition, so smooth and sure that a war could not shake the wheel out of it. There is a peace on the far side of that, one the philosophers across town keep writing books trying to reach. They seek it in doctrines. You found it in a schedule. Wake, tend, carry, teach, dine, watch, sleep. The same day, endlessly, and never once, in 30 years, a day that did not matter. Ask a Roman in the street what the Vestals do, and after keep the fire, the second answer is this. They make the mola salsa. And if the fire is the heart of your service, the mola salsa is its hands. Mola salsa means simply salted flour. It is a preparation of ground spelt, an ancient wheat, older than fashion, the grain of Rome's earliest farmers, mixed with prepared salt. That's all. Flour and salt, the two most basic ingredients of the most basic food on earth. And yet no public sacrifice in Rome, none, can properly happen without it. Before an animal is offered to the gods, At any of the great altars of the state, its head is sprinkled with mola salsa, the very word for sacrificing, immolare, from which comes a word your distant descendants will still use. Immolate literally means to put the mola on. The Vestal's flower is so central to Roman worship that the act of worship is named after it. Every bull offered for a triumph, every ox offered for the emperor's health, every victim at every festival across the sacred year, all of it is consecrated with a handful of what you and your sisters ground with your own hands. The making of it is a ritual in itself, tied to the deep rhythm of the farming year. In May, on appointed days, the three most senior Vestals harvest the first ears of spelt, the first fruits of the season, cut by the holiest hands in Rome. The grain is roasted, pounded, and ground. The salt is not ordinary table salt either. It is prepared with old, careful ceremony, baked hard and cut, mixed with living water. Then, on 3 occasions, scattered through the year, the feast of Vesta in June among them, the batches are prepared and stored, ready to be sent out to sanctify the sacrifices of the state. Think about the quiet strangeness of it. Rome's religion runs on blood and marble and smoke, on white bulls and gilded horns and priests in purple-bordered togas. But before any of that spectacle can mean anything, someone has to do what women have done at hearths since the beginning of time: grind grain, mix salt, make the plain holy food. The most domestic labor imaginable, performed by 6 women, powering the ceremonies of a world empire. Rome dressed itself in gold, but it seasoned its sacrifices from your kitchen. There is a lesson in that, and on long afternoons at the mill, with flour dust hanging in the sunbeams, and the millstone murmuring its one endless syllable, you have time to think about it. Rome believes that the grandest things stand on the humblest: the empire on the hearth, the sacrifice on the flour, the state on the quiet, repetitive, unglamorous faithfulness of people nobody watches. Nobody watches you grind. Everybody depends on it. Let's talk about what you look like now, because in Rome, appearance is language, and your appearance says things no other woman in the city is allowed to say. You wear white, not the off cream of an ordinary tunic, but the deliberate, luminous white of fine undyed wool, ankle length, modest, immaculate. Wool matters. It is the ancient fiber, the pure fiber, the fabric of ritual. Over it, at sacrifices, you wear the suffibulum, a short white veil, bordered in purple, pinned at the breast with a brooch, framing your face in a way that no other garment in Rome frames any other face. Anyone who sees a suffibulum knows instantly from across the forum what you are. Your hair is bound in the seni crines, the 6 braids, wound with woolen ribbons. Only 2 kinds of women in the entire Roman world wear this hairstyle: brides on their wedding day, and you every day. A bride wears it for one morning of her life, as she crosses from her father's house to her husband's. You wear it for 30 years, because you made a stranger crossing, from your father's house to the goddesses, from daughter to something Rome has no other word for. Around your head, the infula, the sacred woolen band with its hanging ribbons, the mark of a thing consecrated and untouchable. And untouchable is the precise word. When you walk out into the city, and you do walk out, Vestals are not cloistered, and the streets of Rome know your face. The crowd parts. An attendant called a lictor walks before you, the same kind of official escort that walks before consuls and praetors, the men who govern the world. If a magistrate meets you in the street, he yields to you. His lictors lower their rods. Power, in the most hierarchical city on earth, steps aside for a woman in white. There is more, and it is stranger. If a condemned prisoner, on his way to execution, happens to cross your path, truly by chance, not by arrangement, he is spared. Your presence encountered accidentally cancels a death sentence. You do not petition. You do not argue his case. You simply exist in the wrong place at the right time, and the law releases him because the meeting is read as the will of the gods. And who is the executioner to argue with the gods? To injure you is death. To insult you is sacrilege. To pass beneath your litter when you are carried through the streets is, by old belief, a capital offense. No body in Rome, not the emperor's, is hedged with more protection than yours. Sometimes, walking through the forum with your lictor ahead and the crowds folding back like water, you catch your reflection in a polished bronze shopfront, a figure in white, veiled, braided, banded in wool, moving through the loudest city in the world, inside a private pocket of silence. You barely recognize her. She looks like something from the age of Numa. She looks like an idea more than a person, but she is a person. Under the wool and the ribbons, there is still a woman who was once a girl, who once had a name her mother called her by. Rome sees the white. Only the house, only your 5 sisters, still reliably sees you. Hold that thought. We're about to look at what Rome gave you in exchange for taking so much. And this is where the story stops being what most people expect. Here is what most people get wrong about you. When later ages imagine a Vestal Virgin, they imagine a prisoner in white, a girl locked in a temple, owned by priests, stripped of every freedom a woman could have. And it is true that Rome took your childhood, your marriage years, and 30 years of your life. But here is the part almost nobody expects. In exchange, Rome made you legally freer than any other woman in the empire, freer in some ways than most men. Start with the foundation of Roman family law. Patria potestas, the father's power. An ordinary Roman woman lives her entire life under some man's legal authority. As a girl, her father can arrange her marriage, control her property, direct her life. Married, she may pass into her husband's control. Widowed, she gets a guardian, a tutor, because Roman law simply does not believe a woman should manage her own affairs unsupervised. From cradle to grave, an ordinary woman is legally attached to a man the way a boat is attached to a dock. You were cut loose at 6 years old. The moment the Pontifex Maximus said, "I take you," your father's power over you ended forever, and nothing replaced it. You did not pass into the power of the priests, or the temple, or the state. You emerged from the captio as that almost unheard of thing, a legally independent female person. What does that mean in practice? It means you can own property in your own name, land, houses, slaves, money, and manage it yourself with no guardian looking over your shoulder. The state settles a substantial sum on you when you enter service, a kind of public dowry, and wealthy admirers and grateful citizens add legacies over the years, and all of it is yours. Some Vestals become seriously rich. They lend money. They own estates. They free their own slaves with their own word. It means you can write a will. That sounds small, until you remember that an ordinary Roman woman needs her guardian's approval to do it, and an early law often couldn't meaningfully do it at all. You can dispose of your fortune exactly as you please, and if you die without a will, your property goes not back to your family, but to the state, because legally speaking, Rome is your family now. It means that when you speak in a court of law, you are not even required to swear an oath. Think about what that implies. Every other witness in Rome must call down the gods to guarantee their honesty. Your word alone is sufficient. The law's official position is that a Vestal does not lie, that your testimony is, by definition, already sacred. There may be no greater compliment ever paid by a legal system to a class of human beings. It means you sit where no other woman sits. At the games, at the theater, at the great spectacles, ordinary women are relegated to the high, distant back rows. You have reserved seats of honor at the front, down where the senators sit, in the marble seats with your title carved into them. When the emperors come to power, the empress herself will sit among you, the Vestal's box being the only respectable place in the house for the most powerful woman in the world. It means you ride when everyone else walks. Wheeled traffic is banned from Rome's streets in daylight. Even senators pick their way through the mud on foot. You travel in a carpentum, a two-wheeled covered carriage, through the middle of the city, in the middle of the day, with a lictor clearing the road ahead. In the entire empire, almost no one else has this right. It means your body itself is sacrosanct, legally inviolable, like the body of a tribune of the people, and it means that when you die, you may be buried inside the city walls. Rome has buried its dead outside the walls since the age of the kings. It is one of the oldest laws on the books. For you, the law steps aside one last time. Even in death, Rome keeps you close. Now weigh the two sides of the scale, because Romans certainly did, and families did it with a sharp pencil. On one side, 30 years of service, no marriage, no children, absolute ritual responsibility, and the terrifying penalties we will speak of later, because we must, and we will gently. On the other, wealth, independence, legal personhood, physical inviolability, front row seats at the center of the world, the ear of senators and emperors, and a kind of honor no queen ever quite matched. Was it worth it? Roman families disagreed, furiously. Some fathers schemed and lobbied to get their daughters chosen, seeing a Vestal daughter as a glory to the family name for generations. Others, when the priests came recruiting, quietly betrothed their small daughters in a hurry, because a betrothed girl was ineligible, and there were eras when the college struggled to fill vacancies, which tells you that plenty of Romans looked at the bargain, looked at their little girl, and said no. And what did the girls themselves think? Nobody asked them. You were 6. Nobody asked you. But here is the honest, complicated truth that the simple version of your story never includes. Many Vestals, given the chance to leave at the end of their 30 years, free to marry, free to go anywhere, free to be ordinary at last, stayed. They looked at the world outside, the world of husbands and guardians and back row seats, and they chose the fire. Keep that in mind as we go deeper into your days. This life took nearly everything. It also gave things no other life in Rome could give. Both facts are true at once, and you live inside both of them every single day for 30 years. We should spend a little time in Rome itself, because your Rome is not the Rome anyone else knows. Same streets, same smells, same million people, entirely different city. Start with the noise, because Rome is noise before it is anything else. You live at the bottom of a bowl of it. The forum at midday is lawyers shouting, auctioneers chanting, schoolboys reciting, money changers clinking, a beggar's litany, a senator's laugh, somewhere a flute, all of it stacked and echoing off marble until it becomes a single vast surf sound that Romans stop hearing by about age 5. Above the bowl, the hills, on the hills, the mansions, between everything, the tenements, the insulae, stacked 6 stories high, laundry to laundry, cook fire to cook fire, humanity compressed to a density the world has never seen before and will not see again for many centuries. Into this, on temple business or family visits or festival duty, you go, and the city performs its strange magic trick around you. The crowd that shoves everyone parts for you. The noise that spares no one drops, just slightly in the bubble where you walk. Your lictor moves ahead, the whisper moves faster, the Vestal, and you travel through the loudest place on earth, inside a small traveling silence, like the eye of a very polite storm. You learn what it means to be Rome's shared possession. Mothers lift babies to see you pass, for the luck of it. A juggler pauses his act. Hard men step out of doorways and incline their heads. A magistrate's whole escort halts to give you the wall. Strangers feel they know you, and in a sense they do, because you belong to them, the way the aqueducts and the legions and the luck of the city belong to them. An old woman once grips your hand outside a bakery and says, "I saw you taken, dear. I was there in the forum that day, little thing in your best tunic." She was one face in that long ago crowd. She has thought of you as partly hers for 30 years. They all do. And you see the city as almost no one else can, because you cut through all its layers. In a single week, you might dine within earshot of the palace and stand in a plague-poor alley where a family wants a blessing on a new baby. Rome is the most stratified society imaginable, slave and free, citizen and foreigner, plebeian and patrician, each rank dressed and seated and addressed by rule. You alone slide between the layers without belonging to any of them. Senators defer to you, and so do slaves, and neither is quite sure what you are, and that is precisely the design. You are outside the pyramid. It is lonely up there, or out there. The geometry is unclear even to you, but the view is unmatched. The games show you the whole machine at once. From the front seats, those marble chairs with your titles cut into the stone, close enough to see the sand, you watch Rome watching itself, 50,000 faces in their strict ascending rings, senators to knights to citizens, to the high distant galleries where the ordinary women sit, the whole social order rendered in seating. And down in front, in the best seats in the world, 6 women who own nothing of the show and preside over all of it. When the crowd wants mercy for a fallen fighter, faces turn toward your box among the dignitaries, as if mercy naturally lived where you sat. Sometimes you suppose it does. There are family days, too, the tenderest and strangest of your outings. Your parents' house, then your brother's, then in time your nephew's, the same courtyard, new children, the family orbit wheeling on with you as its fixed star. You arrive with a lictor and leave with honey cakes. The little grandnieces are torn between awe and the discovery that the sacred aunt gives excellent shoulder rides. Somewhere between the front door and the dining couch, you manage for an hour to be simply a woman visiting her people, though never entirely. Even here, the wine is offered to you first. Even here, your mother's old friends touch your sleeve for luck. You gave your family up at 6 and got them back at a slight, permanent golden distance. It is not what you would have chosen. It is far from nothing. And when the visit ends and the streets take you home, there is always the same last turn around the corner of the Regia into the open ground before the temple, where the smoke stands up thin and gray against the evening. Every Roman heart lifts a little at the sight of its own doorway. Yours lifts at a column of smoke. Proof from 3 streets away that the sisters have kept it, that the center held while you were gone, that the small round building at the bottom of the roaring bowl is doing what it has always done, which is to sit quietly at the heart of the uproar, burning steadily, holding the whole mad, magnificent city gently by the hand. Rome outside your door is chaos that works. You are one of the reasons it works. The city knows it, and the city, in its rough way, loves you for it. And a city's love, you have learned, is the strangest warmth there is. Vast, impersonal, and utterly sincere. If you're still with me, drifting somewhere between this century and that one, don't fight it. Let your breathing slow to the pace of a banked fire, and as you settle deeper, think for a moment about the hearths in your own life, the kitchen table, the old stove, the fireplace at a grandparent's house, the warm centers your family gathered around, and who it was that kept them burning. Someone always keeps them burning. Tonight, in this story, it's you. Because here is what the histories rarely pause to describe: the ordinary evenings. Not the festivals, not the crises, just the 10,000 quiet nights that make up an actual life in the house of the Vestals. The house settles at dusk, the way all houses settle. Lamps are lit along the colonnade, small gold points doubling themselves in the long pools of the courtyard. The smell of the evening meal drifts from the kitchens, and the Vestals eat well, let it be said. This is a wealthy household of the Roman state, with cooks and cellars and good bread, and dinner is proper and unhurried. You recline with your sisters, 5 women and girls in white, and you talk. What do you talk about? What every household talks about: the day's small dramas, the new serving girl who sings while she works, the senator who tripped on his toga in the forum, and the heroic effort it took not to laugh, because Vestals do not laugh at senators, at least not where the senators can see. The chief Vestal's knee, which aches before rain and has become the household's most reliable weather oracle. The little one's progress with her prayers. The donkey, who has learned to open the grain bin and is facing serious disciplinary proceedings. This is the thing about the sisterhood that no legal document records. It is a family. Not the family any of you would have chosen. None of you chose anything, but a family nonetheless, with all the textures of one. There are pairs of Vestals who love each other like true sisters, decades of shared watches binding them tighter than blood. There are pairs who have politely detested each other since the reign of the last emperor and conduct their feud in a dialect of raised eyebrows so subtle that outsiders never detect it. There are jokes so old that no one remembers their origins, repeated anyway, funny anyway. There is the particular tenderness of the older women toward the newest child, because every one of them was that child, standing shorn and terrified in the doorway, and no one forgets. After dinner, the house divides. Whoever holds the night watch wraps up against the cold and crosses the few steps to the temple. The others drift to their rooms, to needlework, to letters, Vestals read and write, manage their properties by correspondence, keep up with family news. Your mother writes to you. Your brothers visit, are received in the public rooms, tell you about their careers and their children, the nieces and nephews who are the closest you will come to children of your own, and you find over the years that you have become the family's fixed point, the one who is always in the same place, always findable, while everyone else's life churns with marriages and campaigns and provinces. And then there is the watch itself, which over 30 years becomes less a duty than a second heartbeat. You take your turn in rotation, and the deep night watch is the one you come to love, though you would never have believed it at 8 years old. The temple at the third hour of night is the stillest place in the Roman world. The round chamber holds the day's warmth. The fire mutters and shifts, painting slow amber light up the columns. Through the smoke hole, a coin of night sky, sometimes a star in it. Outside, Rome, enormous, ferocious, million-voiced Rome, is finally asleep, and the only sound is the one sound that has never stopped in 700 years. You feed the flame, you say the old words, you sit, and in that stillness strange thoughts come, the kind that only visit people who keep watches. You think about the woman who sat on this stool 100 years ago, and the one 100 years before her, all the way back, an unbroken chain of women in the dark, each one holding the same small light. You think about the girl who will sit here 100 years after you are gone, who will never know your name, who will inherit your fire without ever knowing your face. The chain runs through you now. You are one link of it, warm and alive, between the dead and the unborn. The fire snaps. You add wood. Somewhere across the dark city, a baby is crying. A baker is starting his ovens. A sentry is changing on the walls. The empire turns over in its sleep. You keep the light on. That is the whole job in the end. Someone has to keep the light on. Every June, for 9 days, Rome remembers you exist, not with the hush of ritual, but with something close to joy. The Vestalia, the festival of Vesta, from the 7th to the 15th of June, and for those 9 days your quiet goddess of the hearth becomes the most celebrated deity in the city. It begins with a door opening. On the 7th of June, the inner sanctuary of the temple, the curtained space ordinarily forbidden to every human being except you and your sisters, is opened to the married women of Rome. For these days only, the matrons of the city may come to the shrine of the goddess of their own hearths. They come barefoot, by ancient custom, walking unshod through the forum, carrying simple offerings of food on plain trays, the way their great-great-grandmothers did before Rome had marble, rich women and poor women, senators' wives and shopkeepers' wives, all of them barefoot, all of them humble, filing through your temple to stand for a moment before the fire that stands for every fire. You watch them come day after day, and there is something in it that moves you every single year. These women live the life you never lived. Husbands, children, kitchens of their own. You live the life they never lived. And for 9 days in June, the two kinds of women's lives in Rome face each other across a hearth and recognize something shared. Every one of these matrons keeps a small Vesta alive at home. You keep the large one, same goddess, same work, different scale, and then there are the donkeys, and the donkeys are wonderful. The Vestalia is also the holiday of the bakers and the millers, because bread is Vesta's business, and the millstone is her machine, and in the old days every hearth baked its own loaves under her protection. So on the 9th of June, the bakeries of Rome shut down, the mills stop turning, and the humble donkeys who walk in circles all year grinding the city's grain are given their annual day of glory. They are unhitched, brushed, and garlanded with violets, with actual necklaces of small loaves strung around their shaggy necks, and led through the streets like little gray triumphing generals. Why donkeys? The poets tell a story. Once, long ago, the lecherous god Priapus crept toward the sleeping Vesta with wicked intent, and a donkey brayed at exactly the right moment, waking the goddess and saving her honor. Ever since, the donkey is Vesta's animal, honored at her feast. Whether anyone strictly believes the tale hardly matters. What matters is that once a year, the hardest working, least glamorous animal in Rome gets flowers, bread, and a parade, courtesy of the hardest working, least glamorous goddess in the pantheon. You suspect Vesta approves entirely. The festival closes on the 15th with house cleaning of all things, sacred house cleaning. The temple is swept, and the year's accumulated dust and refuse is carried out along a prescribed route and disposed of according to rules older than anyone's memory. Only when the sweeping is done and the temple is clean does the calendar mark the day as fully open for public business. Rome's legal year, in a small way, waits on your broom. The city cannot get on with things until Vesta's house is tidy. If there is a more perfect image of what Romans truly believed about hearth and home, no one has found it. But June is only the loudest month. Your year, and you live by the ritual calendar the way farmers live by seasons, is stitched through with duties, some beautiful, some deeply strange. On the 1st of March, the old Roman New Year, the sacred fire is ceremonially renewed, and fresh laurel is hung at the temple. Even a flame that never dies gets a birthday. In mid-April comes the Forticidia, and it is one of the old dark fertility rites of the farming calendar. Pregnant cows are sacrificed to the earth for the fertility of the fields and herds, and it falls to the most senior of you, the Virgo Maxima herself, to burn the unborn calves upon the altar and preserve the ashes. It is a heavy, ancient, unsettling duty. Even Romans found it archaic, and it is performed without flinching because the ashes are needed. For what? For 6 days later. On the 21st of April, the birthday of Rome itself, the festival of Perilia, shepherds and citizens purify themselves and their flocks by leaping over bonfires, and into the ritual fumigations go materials prepared by your hands. The ashes from the Forticidia, mixed with the dried blood of the October horse. A war horse sacrificed the previous autumn after a chariot race on the field of Mars, its blood kept in your temple's care through the winter. Ash of the unborn, blood of the warrior, smoke and fire on the city's birthday. You are the keeper of these strange preserved substances, the pharmacist of Rome's oldest magic, and when the bonfires crackle on Rome's birthday, something from your storeroom is in the smoke. In May comes one of the most mysterious rites of all, the Arge. In solemn procession, the priests, the magistrates, and you Rome carries 27 figures of men, woven from rushes and straw, through the city to the ancient wooden bridge over the Tiber. And there, one by one, the straw men are thrown into the river. Even Rome's own scholars argue about what it means. A substitute for some forgotten sacrifice from the deep past, a cleansing the city's accumulated ill luck bundled into effigies and sent downstream to the sea? Nobody knows. You don't know either. You perform it anyway, with perfect care, because that is the Roman way. The ritual is kept even when the reason is lost, especially when the reason is lost. And through it all runs the steady undertow of the ordinary sacred work, the daily water from the spring, the daily tending, the mola salsa in May and June and autumn, the prayers at dawn, the presence required at public sacrifices, at the great games, at the rites of goddesses whose ceremonies only women may attend. When the state performs its December rites of the good goddess, Bona Dea, a ritual so strictly female that men may not even remain under the roof, the Vestals officiate at the house of the highest magistrate, and the most powerful men in the world wait outside their own front doors while you conduct business with heaven. Your calendar is Rome's oldest layer, the farming village year of a people who became an empire without ever quite deciding to stop being a farming village. Emperors come and go above it. The deep year turns beneath, and you turn with it. March laurel, April ashes, May straw men, June barefoot matrons, and donkeys in violets, around and around, 30 times in a service, the great slow wheel of the sacred year, with a fire at the hub that never goes out. We have to talk now about the fear. Every life has one, running underneath its days like a river under a city, and yours is simple to name, the fire, because fires go out. That is what fires do. Every Vestal knows the stories, passed down the generations in lowered voices, the mornings, a handful of them scattered across the centuries, when a watcher looked into the hearth of the Roman people and found it gray. Understand what that moment means to Rome. It is not an accident. Roman religion barely has a category for accidents. A dead flame is a message, a sign that the goddess has withdrawn, that the ancient compact is strained, that something somewhere is wrong. Word runs through the city like cold water. The priests convene. Public business hesitates. An anxious murmur moves through a million people, all of them asking the same question about 6 women. What happened in the temple? And for the Vestal on whose watch it happened, what follows is the harshest thing the order ever inflicts, short of its ultimate penalty. She is scourged, beaten with rods, by the Pontifex Maximus himself. The old sources add the strange, careful details. It is done in darkness, behind a curtain, the priest and the priestess screened from every eye. Even in punishment, no man may look upon a Vestal's uncovered body. Even in disgrace, her sanctity holds. It is a contradiction the Romans never resolved because they never felt it needed resolving. She is holy, therefore she must be beaten for failing. She is holy, therefore the beating itself must be hedged with reverence. Then comes the relighting, and even that is hard. You cannot fetch new fire from a neighbor's lamp. The hearth of the state cannot borrow. The flame must be born new by the oldest methods humans know, in the ancient way, by friction, boring wood against wood from a fruitful tree until a coal glows, or, as later generations did, by catching the light of the sun itself in a polished vessel and focusing it to a point of flame. Fire from wood, or fire from heaven. Nothing secondhand. Rome's hearth is rekindled from first principles, as if the world were starting over, because in a small ritual way it is. So you live, all 30 years, with a low hum of vigilance that never fully switches off. You wake in the night certain you smelled the smoke change. You count the wood store twice. On stormy nights, when the wind comes down the smoke hole and the flame flattens and gutters and stands up again, 6 hearts in the house next door flatten and gutter and stand up with it. But here is the other thing the stories carry, alongside the fear, and you hold on to these the way sailors hold on to tales of survived storms. They tell of the Vestal Amelia, generations ago, on whose watch, or on the watch of a novice she had trusted, the fire failed. As the city trembled and suspicion gathered, she prayed before the cold hearth in front of the priests and tore the linen band from her garment and laid it on the dead ashes. And the ashes, the story swears, bloomed into flame. The goddess herself acquitted her, fire from nothing, innocence written in light. And they tell of Tuccia, accused, falsely, of breaking her vows, with no witness to clear her. Tuccia staked her life on a miracle. She took a sieve, walked to the Tiber, and prayed, "Vesta, if I have served you with pure hands, let me carry this." Then she filled the sieve with river water and carried it, water held in a mesh of holes, defying its own nature, through the streets of Rome, all the way to the temple, spilling not a drop. No court in the world could argue with that. Her accuser, the tale notes with some satisfaction, was never heard from again. Are the stories true? You are a priestess, not a philosopher, and anyway, that is the wrong question. The stories are load-bearing, like the fire. They say, the goddess knows her own. They say, innocence in the end can be proven, even against the worst of accusations. On the hard nights, that is what you need them to say, because there is a worse accusation than a failed fire. You know it. Every Vestal knows it. It is the shadow at the edge of this whole bright, honored life, and we cannot tell your story honestly without walking briefly and gently into that shadow. Take a slow breath. The fire is lit. We'll keep it in sight the whole way. Everything you have, the wealth, the honor, the lictor, the front row marble seat with your title carved in it, rests on a single foundation, the vow. 30 years of absolute chastity. It is not a preference or a policy. In the Roman mind, your purity and the city's safety are the same substance. The untouched flame, the untouched priestess, the unconquered city. One thing, 3 forms. And so the breaking of the vow, the crime the law calls incestum, is not treated as a personal failing. It is treated as a wound to Rome itself, an omen of the same order as the dying of the fire, but darker. You learn about the penalty the way children learn about all terrible things, in fragments, sideways, before you are ready. An older girl's unfinished sentence, a place outside the Colline gate that grown Vestals do not name, a field whose very name means what happened there, the Campus Sceleratus, the evil field. Here is what the tradition holds, and we will say it plainly once and softly and not linger. A Vestal condemned for breaking her vow could not be executed like an ordinary criminal. No one may shed the blood of one so sacred. No hand may strike her. So Rome, with the terrible logic of a people who believed their own rules to the very end, devised a way to punish without touching. She was carried through silent streets in a closed litter, mourned by the crowd as if already gone, to a small underground room prepared at the evil field. Within it, a lamp, a little bread, water, milk, oil, token provisions, so that by the letter of the law, no one could say Rome had starved a priestess. She descended. The chamber was sealed and covered over, and the city walked away and told itself that it had not killed her, that it had merely given her back to the earth and left her fate to the goddess. Let's be honest with each other in the dark, as this channel always tries to be. That is a horror dressed in ceremony. The Romans knew it too. Their own writers describe those processions as the most dreadful sight the city ever saw. Rome weeping for a woman Rome itself had condemned. There was no appetite in it, no festival cruelty of the arena, only a kind of collective dread, as if the whole city were doing something it could not stop and could not bear. And now the historian's duty, which is also, strangely, the comforting part. It almost never happened. Across the entire 1,000-year history of the order, 1,000 years, hundreds of women, the recorded cases of Vestals actually condemned can be counted in a handful or two. It was never routine. Decades, whole centuries, passed without a single accusation. The overwhelming truth of Vestal life was not this shadow, but the 10,000 ordinary days we have been walking through. The water, the flower, the watches, the sisters, the donkeys and violets. But notice when the rare condemnations cluster, because it tells you what was really happening. They come at Rome's worst moments, after catastrophic military defeats, in years of plague and panic, in seasons when the city was terrified and needed the terror to mean something. A disaster strikes. The people ask what went wrong with the gods, and eyes turn horribly toward the temple. In those fevered years, an accusation might be built on nothing, a manner too charming, a wit too free, a dress too fine, an enemy too ambitious. Ancient writers themselves record doubts about several famous cases, and one of the most notorious condemnations, centuries into the imperial age, was pushed through by an emperor over protests that the woman had answered every charge, a verdict that revolted even hardened Roman observers, and history has largely sided with her. So this is the truth about the shadow. It was less about what Vestals did than about what Rome feared. You six were the city's lightning rods. In good years, that meant honor beyond measure. In terrible years, it meant that the storm might come looking for you. Most Vestals lived and died without ever hearing thunder. All of them lived knowing the sky was there. And how do you live with that in a night after night, decade after decade, the way people always have? You trust your own hands. You trust your sisters, who know your every hour and would swear to them without an oath. You keep Tuccia's sieve in your heart, proof that even the worst accusation is not the end of the story. And you tend the fire, because the fire is the answer to everything. As long as it burns bright, and the rituals run true, and the city sleeps easy, the shadow stays where shadows belong, at the far edge of a well-lit room. Enough. We have paid the darkness its due, honestly, and now we are done with it. Come back toward the warmth. There is so much more life in this life, and some of the best of it is about to knock on your door, because it turns out the house of the Vestals sits in the middle of everything, and history has a habit of walking past your windows. Somewhere along the way, no one ever passed a law about it. It simply grew, the way the deepest Roman institutions grew. Your house became the safest place in the world. Think about the problem every powerful Roman has. He has a will, and his will is dynamite. It names heirs, disinherits rivals, redistributes fortunes, sometimes reshapes the politics of the state. Where does he keep it? His own house can burn, or be searched, or be betrayed by a freedman with a price. A banker can be bought. A friend can become an enemy. What he needs is a vault that no one, no creditor, no rival, no magistrate, no emperor would ever dare to force. There is exactly one such vault in Rome, and you live in it. The house of the Vestals becomes the deposit box of the Roman elite. Wills, above all, including in time the wills of the masters of the world. The dictator Julius Caesar lodges his will with the chief Vestal. When he is assassinated, it is from your house that the document emerges, the document that names his heir, and thereby, though no one yet knows it, sets the course of the next 500 years. The Emperor Augustus does the same. So do the emperors after him. Treaties are entrusted to you. Fortunes are entrusted to you. State documents, whose contents could topple careers, sit quietly in your keeping, and everyone sleeps soundly, because everyone knows the one unshakable fact. The Vestals do not give things up, and no one can make them. Almost no one. Once, and Romans argued about it for generations, a man dared. In the last convulsions of the Republic, with the world splitting between Octavian and Mark Antony, Antony's will lay deposited in your house. Octavian demanded it. The Vestals refused flatly to hand it over. The deposit was sacred, and not even the most powerful man in Italy had a right to it. So Octavian came and took it himself, and read it to the Senate, and used its contents to destroy Antony's reputation and justify the final war. He won that war and became Augustus, master of everything. But notice what even he did not dare. He did not punish the Vestals for refusing him. He knew, and all Rome knew, that they had been right and he had transgressed. The women had held the line, a warlord had stepped over it. History remembers which was which. Your protection runs the other direction too, because your person is inviolable, your presence is a shelter. Men fleeing enemies have put themselves under Vestal protection and survived. In the proscriptions and terrors of the civil wars, when death lists were posted in the forum and no door in Rome was safe, there are men who lived because a Vestal stood beside them, and no blade in the city would pass her. You are 6 unarmed women, and you are, in certain moments, stronger than an armed guard, because a bodyguard can be outnumbered, but sacrilege cannot. And so, without ever seeking it, you have power, real, working, political power of a kind no other women in Rome possess. Not the power to command, the power to guarantee. Your presence at a treaty makes it solemn. Your intercession for a man makes his pardon thinkable. When you and your sisters formally plead for someone, and Vestals do, walking in a body to speak for a defendant or a fallen politician's memory, Rome listens because you ask so rarely and stand so high and want so little for yourselves. The philosophers can keep their paradoxes. You live the greatest one daily. Rome silenced you in the assemblies, barred you from office, denied you a vote, and then handed you its secrets, its fortunes, its treaties, and its emperor's last wishes, because you were the only people in the city everyone trusted. lived 30 years at the exact center of the Roman world, and history does not need to be sought. It walks past your windows. You have seen it since you were small. The triumphs come right through the forum, the whole thundering pageant of a victorious general's parade, captives and painted floats and soldiers singing rude songs, passing directly below the house of the Vestals, while you and your sisters watch from the best vantage in Rome. The great funerals pass too, and the riots, and the elections, and the mobs. The rostra, where the orators harangue the people, is up the way, the Senate House beyond it. On a loud day, you can sit in your quiet courtyard beside the still pools and hear the Republic arguing with itself at the top of its lungs. Sometimes the history is close enough to touch. Every Vestal knows the story of Claudia, a Vestal of the old days whose father was celebrating a triumph the tribunes had declared unauthorized. As his chariot rolled through the streets, a tribune moved to drag him down from it and end the parade by force. And Claudia, in her whites and her ribbons, climbed up into her father's chariot and rode beside him the rest of the way, because no man in Rome, not even a tribune of the people, could lay hands on a chariot carrying a Vestal Virgin. She turned her own inviolability into a shield for her father and dared the state to object. The state did not object. There was nothing in the law books for it. One young woman's sanctity outvoted the Roman Constitution for an afternoon. Sometimes the history is stranger and funnier. There was the wealthy Vestal Licinia in the last century of the Republic, whom the famous Crassus, the richest man in Rome, a man whose name would become a byword for greed, was seen visiting constantly, attentively, suspiciously. Tongues wagged, charges were actually brought. For a Vestal, as you know, such gossip is mortally dangerous. And then the truth emerged, and all Rome laughed with relief. Crassus wasn't courting the woman, he was courting her real estate. Licinia owned a villa he wanted, and he had been haggling her down, visit after shameless visit. He was acquitted of impiety, the ancient writers dryly note, on the strength of his avarice, the one motive every juror found completely believable. Licinia kept her honor. Whether she kept the villa, history does not record. And sometimes, history simply moves in next door. The official residence of the Pontifex Maximus, the Regia, stands beside your house. And for a stretch of the Republic's wildest years, the Pontifex Maximus is a lean, sharp-eyed politician named Gaius Julius Caesar, the most dangerous man in Rome, your neighbor, and in religious law, the supervisor of your order, the man who would preside over your rights before crossing the Rubicon and taking the world. The Vestals of that generation knew his household, kept his will, and on the Ides of March learned before almost anyone what Rome would learn by nightfall. You are not on the stage. Vestals never are. That is the safety and the sorrow of it. But you have the closest seats in the theater of the world, and a 30-year ticket, and over the decades you watch consuls rise, and republics wobble, and emperors deified, all from behind a veil that makes you somehow both the most visible and the most invisible woman in Rome. The players change every season. The fire and its keepers stay. There is one more kind of knight we should sit with, rare, but seared into the order's memory, retold to every novice, so that if it ever comes again, her hands will know what to do before her mind catches up. The nights when the fire's oldest enemy came for the fire itself. Because Rome burns. It is a city of timber and tenements, of open braziers and oil lamps and a million cook fires stacked 6 stories high, in a climate with a long dry summer and a wicked seasonal wind. Small fires are as common as market days, and a handful of times across the centuries, the small fires join hands and become the other thing, the city eating thing, and the flames that Vesta's daughters have spent their lives feeding come down the streets of the Forum, looking, it seems, for their mother. You know the oldest story already. Metellus, the pontifex who ran into the burning temple in the days of the wars with Carthage and carried the sacred things out with his own hands, and paid, the legend insists, with his eyes. But the fire that lives in the order's bones came later, in the summer of Nero's reign, when a blaze that began among the shops by the great circus grew for 9 days into the most famous fire in the history of the world. The Vestals of that summer watched it come. Imagine their vigil: smoke first, a brown stain over the Aventine, then the glow at night, then the heat on the wind, then the sound, which survivors of great fires say is the thing you never forget, a roar like a sea that is also somehow chewing. The Forum stands in the fire's road. The temple of Vesta, keeper of flame, is about to be taken by flame, and there is nothing in the ritual books for this except the one instruction that overrides every other: the sacred things must survive. So they did what you would have done, what you in your generation have rehearsed in your mind on bad nights ever since you were told the tale. They gathered what could never be replaced, the holy objects of the penis, the things upon which Rome's destiny is said to ride, the Palladium itself, the little goddess who had already escaped the burning of Troy. And the Vestals carried them out of the temple, through the panicking Forum, through streets full of cinders and screaming, to safety across the river or on the far hills. The accounts differ, and it hardly matters. What matters is the picture, and you carry it always. Women in white, arms full of the luck of the world, walking fast and not running through a city on fire. Troy's survivor, surviving again in the arms of a priestess whose name history did not bother to keep. The temple burned, the house burned, much of Rome burned, and then, this is the part that tells you everything about both Rome and the order. They rebuilt it and relit the fire by the pure old methods, and the watches resumed in temporary quarters at first, then in a temple grander than before. The emperors, whatever else they were, understood that Rome could lose almost anything except this. When fire took the temple again, more than a century later, an empress, Julia Domna, a philosopher's patron and the most formidable woman of her age, took the rebuilding as her own project, and the round temple rose once more, its stones stamped with her care. The building you serve in is a phoenix several times over. Even the house of the Vestals you live in, with its 50 rooms and its long pools, is largely the child of those rebuildings. Catastrophe's gift, grief converted patiently into architecture. The novices always ask the same question when they are told these stories, and you asked it too. Did the sacred fire itself go out those nights? And the honest answer is the one the old Vestals give with a small, complicated smile. The flame on the hearth may be lost to a burning roof, but the fire of Vesta is not the object. It is the keeping. Relit by sun or friction, housed in a borrowed shrine, guarded in exile on a hillside while the city smokes below, It remained the fire because the watch around it never broke. Buildings are mortal, the vigil is not. That is the deepest secret of the order, deeper than anything in the penis. What Rome actually depends on was never the flame. It was always the women. And on ordinary nights, which is to say almost all of them, when your watch is quiet and the roof is sound, and the greatest danger on duty is drowsiness, you sometimes look up through the smoke hole at the peaceable stars and think of those sisters on the burning nights and feel the strange comfort of belonging to something that has already survived the worst several times. The fire has been through the fire, so has the house, so by inheritance have you. The decades do what decades do, quietly without asking permission. 1 year, you are the girl learning the prayers. Then somehow, you are the woman hearing them recited back to you by a child with your old stumbles in the same old places. Your second decade, the decade of performing, passes in the full stride of the work. You are the one trusted with the great sacrifices now, the one who harvests the May spelt, the one whose steady hands the whole college relies on. And then your third decade opens, and you understand that you have become the thing you once watched with awe, a senior Vestal, a teacher, a keeper not just of the fire, but of the knowing. Because that is the true treasure of the house, more than the wills and the relics, the knowing. How to read a flame's mood, which words the books get wrong, and the voice must get right. How to stand for 6 hours of ceremony without swaying, where the temple roof leaks in a northeast rain, which senators can be trusted and which merely sound like it. What to say to a 7-year-old on her first night, in the dark, when she is trying so hard not to cry. None of it is written anywhere. All of it lives in the older women and is poured patiently, decade by decade, into the younger. A second flame, tended exactly like the first, never allowed to go out. You teach the little ones, and the teaching softens you in some ways and steels you in others. You catch yourself repeating sentences the old Chief Vestal said to you 40 years ago, and hearing too late how much love was hidden in their strictness. The girls think you ancient and all-knowing. You remember thinking the same and being the same age they are now, and how the ancient all-knowing women turned out to be tired human beings doing their best, which is you now understand what all-knowing has always been made of. Perhaps in time you rise to be chief of the order yourself. Virgo Vestalis Maxima, the great Vestal, the first woman of Rome in everything but name. The chief Vestal deals with pontiffs and palaces. Emperors receive her. Her statue joins the marble sisters in the courtyard, your own face rendered in stone, gazing at the pools with the same expression you have worn through 10,000 ordinary evenings. The little girls will walk past it long after you are gone and wonder idly who you were. You walked past the others and wondered the same. The courtyard is a conversation of the living and the dead, conducted entirely in silence, and now you are part of both sides of it. Your body keeps its own calendar. The knees announce the rain now. You have become the household weather oracle, and you remember laughing about your predecessor's knee, and you would apologize to her if you could. The water jar walk is done by younger arms, but the deep night watch you keep as long as you can, because it is yours. Because after 50 years, the stillness of the temple at the third hour is the closest thing you have to a mirror. The fire knew you as a child. It knows you now. It is the one witness to your entire life, and you to a sliver of its. The record holder, they say, was a Vestal named Oxia, who served the goddess for 57 years, spanning the fall of the Republic and the rise of the emperors. One woman, one post, while the entire world changed shape around her. Somewhere in your third decade, you begin to understand Oxia from the inside, because here is the fact that surprises everyone who thinks your life was a prison. There is a door, and it opens. At the end of 30 years, a Vestal's obligation is complete. She is released, fully, honorably, with her fortune, her fame, and her freedom intact. She may leave the house, she may go anywhere, she may even marry. The law permits it, and to marry a former Vestal is accounted a prodigious honor for any man, like marrying a piece of the state itself. You entered at 6 or 8 or 10. You are free at 36 or 38 or 40, with decades of life ahead, wealthy, independent, revered. And now, the most telling statistic in this whole story, the one that unravels every simple version of it. Most of them stayed. Some did leave. Some did marry, though Roman superstition, ever ready with an opinion, muttered that such marriages were unlucky, and the old wives kept score of every misfortune that befell them, the way old wives do. But Vestal after Vestal offered the wide world, looked at it carefully, and remained in the house by the temple, in her white wool, among her sisters, beside her fire, until she died. Why, sit with her, this woman at the crossroads of her 30th year, on the night she decides, because you will be her one day, and it is worth understanding in advance. Outside the door is the life she was taken from at 6, but she is not 6. Out there at her age, she would be a curiosity, a bride with gray in her braids, learning to defer to a husband after a lifetime of deferring to no man alive, trading legal independence. Remember, marriage could put her back under a man's hand, for a hearth of her own, one small fire after the fire. Her parents are likely gone. The childhood house has other children in it now. The life she would be returning to no longer exists. It went on without her as lives do, and closed over her absence like water. And inside the door? Inside is everything she actually is. Her work, at which she is now a master. Her sisters, the 10-year-old she comforted who is 40 now, the novices who need her, the whole living chain of women. Her dead in the courtyard marble, her standing, first among the honored, aunt to half the Senate, keeper of secrets, a woman whose word outweighs an oath. Her fire, which she has fed with her own hands across 4 emperors, and which, say it honestly, she loves, the way you love anything you have kept alive for 30 years. She chooses the fire. They almost all chose the fire. And this, in the end, may be the realest answer to the question we started with, what life was really like as a Vestal Virgin. It was a life that began with a taking and a child who had no choice, and it became, for many of these women, a life they chose, freely with eyes open, when the doors stood wide and the world said, "Come out," and they said, "Thank you, no." The cage the later centuries imagined was, to the women who lived in it, a house, their house, the only house in Rome where women answered to a goddess and each other, and no one else at all. You will make the same choice in your 30th year. You already know which way it will go. You knew, if you're honest, somewhere around the 10,000th night, when you realized the sound of the fire had become indistinguishable from the sound of your own thoughts. Every story about a fire that must never go out is also, you understand, a story about the night it does. Your own service will end long before that night. But the order's story has an ending, and we owe it the telling because 1,000 years of watches deserve to know how the last one closed. The fire outlasts almost everything. It outlasts the kings who founded it, and the republic that cherished it, and the civil wars that shook it, and the mad emperors and the good ones. It burns through the burning of Rome itself under Nero, and the temple is rebuilt around it. It burns while the empire converts, slowly and then quickly, to a new faith with no room for the old flame. The Christian emperors withdraw the funding, then the privileges, then the protection. And at the end of the 4th century after Christ, around 11 centuries after the traditional founding of the order, the decrees come down. The temples are closed. The rites are forbidden. The eternal fire of Vesta is extinguished deliberately by order of the Emperor Theodosius, not lost in a storm, not neglected by a sleepy girl, put out by the state that had trembled for centuries at the thought of its dying. We know the name of the last chief Vestal, Coelia Concordia. Think of her for a moment, the final link of the chain, the woman who inherited what 100 generations of shorn-headed girls had handed forward through wars and fires and 1,000 years of nights, and who lived to see it the end on a signature. A generation later, when barbarian armies stood before Rome for the first time in 8 centuries, there were Romans who whispered that they knew exactly when the city's luck had run out and where, and whose small light had been its warranty. Whether you believe them is your affair. The Romans who said it believed it with all their hearts. And yet, go to Rome tonight in your mind as you drift. Go down into the forum after the crowds have thinned in the long gold light of a summer evening, and you can still find her house. The Atrium Vestae is a ruin now, open to the sky, but it is unmistakably itself. The long courtyards, the outlines of the pools, sometimes still holding rainwater and sky, just as they held them for her, and the statues. The marble vestals still stand along the garden, weathered, some faceless, some nameless, their inscriptions worn to ghosts. Tourists walk past them all day. Roses grow there now. In the evening, the swifts come down and hunt low over the old pools, and the light does what light has always done in that courtyard. And if any place in Rome remembers being a home, it is this one. A few steps away, the round temple, a graceful partial circle of columns, reconstructed, instantly recognizable. The hearth is long cold, but stand there and you can measure with your own eyes how small it all was. The temple you could cross in 10 strides, the hearth no bigger than a family's. This was the pilot light of an empire that ruled the world, and you could have warmed your hands at it. And here is the gentle truth to carry into sleep. The fire is not entirely gone, because the idea was never really about the flame. It was about the keeping. It was Rome's way of saying something that is still true in your century, in your house tonight, that civilizations, like homes, do not stay warm by themselves. Someone has to tend them. Someone has to do the unglamorous, invisible daily work of keeping the light on. The parent up at 2 in the morning, the nurse on the night shift, the friend who checks in, the stranger who keeps the small promises that hold the big world together. Every age has its vestals. Most of them are never thanked. All of them are why there is a hearth to come home to. So spare a last thought as your own fire banks down for the night for a girl of 6 in her best tunic, holding her father's too tight hand, walking into the forum toward a life she never chose, and for the old woman she became, who was offered every exit and chose instead to stay by the fire she had turned into a home. Between those two, a whole life, water carried that could not be set down, flower ground in a sunlit dust, festivals of barefoot matrons and garlanded donkeys, secrets kept, sisters loved, watches held in the deepest hours of the night, while an empire slept, safe, because somebody was awake. The watch is yours no longer. You can put it down now. The night is quiet, the embers are banked, and someone else will tend the morning. Rest easy, sleep well. This is drowsy history.